Are you about to make an offer on a property? Stay tuned for my tips on what you need to think about before you sign on that offer. So you've been looking for a property and finally decide it's time to make an offer. The best factor that everybody wants to think about is how much should I offer for the property? Because it seems like price is the only competitive measure for who will win the bid on that house. But that might not necessarily be true. Price may be the first factor, but there are other things that you should try to find out that might help you make sure that your offer is accepted over somebody else's. Closing date may be a factor in the decision for the seller, and while most people think that the quickest sale will get the offer accepted, that might not always be true. So find out with the agent or whoever you're working with is what the situation is. In some cases, the seller does want to move out as quickly as possible and get the house sold. In other cases, the seller might be relocating or purchasing another property, and although they do want to sell, they might want to build in some time and say they will likely accept an offer for somebody that will give them time. The second question that you want to ask yourself is, how much do I put down as a deposit? Usually you leave these to the agent or the person working for you, but I always recommend that you think about it. Sometimes a higher deposit is more enticing to a seller simply for the fact that it gives an impression that the sale is very likely to go through. That might not really matter to some sellers, and I do caution people to be careful about how much they put down. You definitely do not want to put down the full down payment when you want to purchase the property. Usually anywhere from $500 to $1,000 with the offer is sufficient, and then anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 with the signing of the purchase and sale agreement. But some agents insist of a deposit of 2 to 4%, maybe even 5%, but this obviously depends on where you live and what the price of the house is. So ask what's the standard or what is likely to be accepted. When you're making that offer, make sure you take into account the financing contingency. This is simply stating how much time am I requesting to get loan approval with my lender or mortgage. The financing contingency is really the only clause that protects your deposit, because if you have approval, then you will proceed to close as scheduled. But if your loan is denied, there is a set deadline by which the bank will notify you if your loan was approved or not, and on the assumption that it was not, you then have the opportunity to notify the seller and be entitled to the full deposit back to you. So it's the last chance to get all your money back without losing the deposit. The inspection contingency is something that you want to think about. Sometimes in order to get your offer accepted, you might get the recommendation to waive it. Now, if you're certain that that's a good deal, then go ahead, waive the inspection contingency. But otherwise, the standard is that when you sign an offer, you have exactly 10 days or less to conduct an inspection of the property with a licensed inspector. The inspector's job is simply to tell you what problems or conditions they notice on the property that may need attention after you purchase. Do not be alarmed. Their job is to tell you everything that is wrong with the property. Now, not everything needs immediate attention. For example, you could paint the house, you could change the roof, but that doesn't mean it's an emergency or that it needs to be done immediately. The inspection is simply factors that you need to take into account when making a decision of whether you want to buy the property, and for you to account what expenses do you anticipate in the foreseeable future as you become the new owner of that property. Another condition that you want to take into account is the appraisal contingency. That is not normal in any offer, but I highly recommend that you add subject to appraisal value at or above purchase price. Why? Because you are trying to outbid other home buyers, you are likely to make an offer that has a price higher than listing. And if that's the case, yours might be accepted. But what if your purchase is subject to financing and the lender tells you the house does not have the market value that you want to pay for? If you have the cash, obviously you can pay for the price that you agreed to. But when you're getting a loan, the lender will only provide you a loan up to a certain percentage of the value of the property. If you made the offer subject to appraisal contingency, it allows you to go back to the table and either cancel or renegotiate the price. I've had a few examples in the last few months where we have negotiated anywhere from a $15,000 to $35,000 deduction in purchase price because the seller acknowledged that once the property appraisal is completed, chances are that's the most they will get from any other buyer, and the transactions went through. On the buyer's end, they actually got a price for a lot less than they were expecting to pay, so that was a win for both. If you intend to keep the appliances that are in the property, make sure that the offer states appliances to remain in the property. You can be more particular in identifying the stove, the refrigerator, or washer and dryer. I've had plenty of examples where people come back after the sale and they say the refrigerator is gone, the washer and dryer are gone, or even the stove. I know that's not common and it will depend on where you live, but I always tell people if you can grab the appliance and take it with you, then it is not real estate, it's personal property, and if you want to make sure you're keeping it, just add it onto the offer. Additional conditions that you take into account depend on where you live. In some places, you need to make sure that the seller provides you an occupancy permit and a smoke and carbon monoxide inspection by the city or town where you live in. Another factor that you want to take into account is a septic system inspection. If the house that you are buying has a septic system, most purchases are subject to a passing inspection for the septic system. Make sure that's included in the offer because if it needs work, you can get the seller to repair it and pass inspection prior to closing, or in the alternative, they may be able to do a price reduction or leave funds in escrow for the septic system to be repaired and pass inspection. I hope the information I provided you was helpful. Good luck making that offer. If you found the information helpful, please subscribe below and stay tuned for more.